lovely people, and welcome to Owen's Mind. With all the news that's going on, I thought let's just completely avoid that. Let's have a bit of fun. So today I'm going to revive my movie playlist, and I'd like to give my thoughts on the movie Cats. Now, the reason we're doing this, Cats has been out a long time. I didn't catch it in theatres, but it was released digitally yesterday, so it is now available to view in your home. So for those of you who don't know, Cats is based on the 1981 musical of the same name and is directed by Tom Hooper and stars a myriad of famous faces and tells the story of a cat named Victoria who is thrown out by her owner in the movie, and the journey she goes on when she meets a tribe of cats known as the Jellicles as they prepare for the Jellicle Ball, where one of them will become the Jellicle choice and ascend to a better life. So, Tom Hooper previously directed films like The King's Speech and the 2012 adaptation of Les Miserables. So, yeah, Cats has had a bit of a troubled time, let's not beat around the bush, but I'm actually doing this video so I can actually defend it a little bit, because it's been given so much hate. So as it stands now, it's got a 20% Rotten Tomatoes, 53% audience score, and last night I believe it won 6 Razzies at the Razzies for, I think it was Worst Supporting Actor, Worst Film, Worst Supporting Actress, etc, etc, etc. So this film is getting a lot of hate. It's had a lot of hate from the first trailer. People went nuts about the look of the film, and then when it came out, people said it's an unmitigated disaster, and then they released a VFX patch for it because some of it wasn't quite finished and all this kind of stuff. Having seen it for the first time last night, it's not nearly as bad as people say it is, and I'm going to give you a few of my thoughts on why I think that is the case. So let's start with the look of the VFX. So everybody just laid in and said, these effects are terrible. And I think what they meant to say, what I am definitely going to say, is the VFX are not terrible. The VFX are very, very good. The look they create creeped a lot of people out. They didn't like it. I watched the film. I got into it. I didn't mind the actual visual of them, of these kind of anthropomorphic kind of cat people hybrids. I wasn't distracted by it at all. Some people are. That's fine. But that's not the VFX. That's a design thing. The actual digital fur technology is incredibly clever, and if you read about the whole production of it, apparently there's a lot of trouble. They changed effects houses. One company started, another company finished it, and this kind of stuff. But the overall look, how they look and how they move and how the fur is mapped to their body, because there's nobody in actual suits. I can't find any sort of behind-the-scenes footage of what they actually wore, if they wore like motion capture suits or anything. But all the digital fur is added, and it moves as they move, and it's so technically. From a technical perspective, the VFX, very, very good. As far as I'm concerned, I'm no expert, but I've got an eye for spotting VFX, as most people have. I think the VFX is very, very good. Another thing, the actors and actresses, they're all giving their all. Nobody looks like they're phoning it in. They're all in it, and they've got some very tricky dialogue, because a lot of the songs, it's very unique song choices. The lyrics are very, very odd in a lot of these songs. But they sell it. They're really going for it, and they really look like they're invested in what they were doing. The choreography, when it's allowed to breathe, it looks very good. When there's ballet sections, and there's tap dancing sections, and all these cats. You get introduced to various cats through the movie, and they all have their own little thing, and they have their own way of moving and their own style of dance. It's shot beautifully. It looks. The whole, when they scale the world down, because these human-sized people are supposed to be cats, so everything else is massive, and it all looks well, it's shot well. For me, the biggest problem with the movie, with Cats the movie, is Cats the musical. Because they followed the source material quite closely. From what I understand, I've had a quick sort of dive through Google, and it turns out that they changed. So the protagonist of the movie, Victoria, the white cat, that we follow, she kind of leads us through the film. Apparently, she's not as prominent in the musical. She's more of a background character. So her part was played up. There's a few other changes. I think it's Bon Ballerina, who Taylor Swift plays in the movie. She's very much on the villain Cat McCavity's side, whereas in the musical, she's not. She sings a song about him specifically, and in the movie, it's played off as like there's almost admiration there, and apparently in the musical it's not. So there is some minor differences, but essentially if you're going to do Cats, the movie based on the musical, you have to follow the musical, because the musical's been around, like say 1981 it came out. So it's been around, 40 years. So you have to do it justice, because if you change it too much, fans of the musical, of which there is many, 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 will just say, look, you've you've changed it, you've cheapened it, you've not this. So you've got to abide by it, but then you're also bound by some of the flaws in it. So there's a couple of things I have an issue with. Let's get into it a little bit. I have a list in the background. So yeah, the actual narrative of the story is not movie-like. It's great for musicals. Now, full disclosure, I'm not a huge musical fan. I've not been to see lots of musicals. I like, musicals I go back to a lot. I like Moulin Rouge, Baz Luhrmann's Moulin Rouge. I like The Great Showman. But kind of the big West End and the Broadway things that are brought to movies, I've not seen a lot of. It's just not my particular genre. But, I like what I like. And like I say, I enjoyed Moulin Rouge. I enjoy The Great Showman. I actually had quite a good time with this. Now, for all I'm defending it, it is not a great movie, as far as I'm concerned. And I'm no expert, I'm just giving you my thoughts. It's not a great movie, but it's not nearly as bad as people are saying. And again, I think a lot of it, they were bound by the source material. So the whole, rather than have a narrative thread that runs through it, it's a collection of sequences with a very loose thread, which you can maybe get away with in a theatre because it's the theatre experience. You have the band and you have the costumes and the songs and all the choreography, and it's static, it's on a stage. So it can look, it can all be, it's a single viewpoint, if you know what I mean. Whereas in a movie, the camera tracks, it has to move and it has life. So the musical has sections where you're introduced. Victoria is taken by these Jellicle cats, and she meets a different cat, and then we'll hear a song about that cat, and then it doesn't sort of lead anywhere. Then you get another musical number about a different cat. Then you get another musical number about a different cat, and there's a very loose thread running through it, which works okay for theatre because it's the whole theatre experience. Seeing it in a movie, it feels a bit like it's missing something, like it's missing a stronger narrative tie to put everything together. So again, by sticking to that, they are kind of flawed. It's, and you can argue, well, they could have done it this, and you could have done this, but the director's, he's got chops, he knows what he's doing. So yeah, I just think they did with the material they've got. I thought they did very well. And again, I'm not a huge fan of the musical. I know people are, and I have seen it. I saw a DVD of a performance in London, I believe. So I've never been to the theatre to experience it, but I have been to the theatre to experience other things, and the theatre experience is very different from viewing it on a movie. My favourite theatre show, just in case you're wondering, is Le Rêve, which I saw in Vegas. And it's something like, it's called like a series of disconnected dreams or something. I can't remember the exact title, but it was a fantastic show, and it was like in a huge pool, and they had lots of incredible theatrics going on. Seeing it filmed, I imagine, would be a very different experience, because when you're actually there, you get the audience with you, and it's a very different experience. And I imagine it would lose something on film, which I think Cats does. So yeah, all the good stuff. VFX, you might not like the look, but the technical side of getting there, very impressive. All the actors and actresses are in it. They, the singing, really good. The choreography, very good. The way it's shot, the way it's lit, all very good. However, a lot of the problems come from the problems with just the source material, the Cats musical, and there is a few issues in there, from my perspective, which I think would have worked better in a movie had they addressed them a little bit. So you need more of a narrative thread to kind of hold it together. This Jellicle Ball, where they all kind of, essentially, they will be judged by an old cat called Old Deuteronomy, who will hear you sing a song about your life. Essentially, they'll hear each cat sing about who they are, and we hear several of these songs through the movie. And she will then judge it. One cat will ascend, and they ascend to the Heaviside layer, which doesn't sound particularly appealing or magical or somewhere you want to ascend to. It doesn't sound something aspirational, but it's mentioned a lot in the film. I'm going to get Macavity, the bad cat, who's his aim is to kidnap all the other contestants, essentially, so he's the only choice left. And he's like, I will get to the Heaviside layer. And you're just like, it doesn't sound like, so it's never explained what it is, apart from you'll go there, you'll have the life you always wanted. But it's never fleshed out. So you, as an audience member, you don't know, is that something you really want to do? Is that something you want to aspire to. We don't understand why it's so important to them. And again, calling it the Heaviside layer just sounds a little bit, so something like that. Another issue is we have a magical cat called Mr. Mistopheles, and he is never was there ever a cat so clever as magical Mr. Mistopheles. Very famous song, and yeah. However, Macavity has magical powers too. He can essentially teleport. Now, I don't know how this was done in a stage play or if it was done at all. I believe it was to a degree. Obviously, you're limited by what you can do. But in the movie, he literally kind of phases in and out. So making him kind of as magical as this magical cat, you kind of like, never was there ever, like, well, what about this one? What about this bad one which can teleport? Because that's pretty impressive. And he does this to kidnap the other contestants, the other cats. He will appear, he will grab them, whisper something ominous, and then just vanish, and then he ties them up on a barge. So, yeah, they kind of, it's... If they'd made him more kind of devious, more sneaky, if he kind of got, if he lured these cats to a certain place to kidnap them, the fact he can kind of just appear, grab them and disappear, and then you've got another cat and you try and put all, towards the end, they put all their kind of faith in him to bring one of these cats back. It kind of loses how special he is because the bad guy can kind of do the same. And at the very end, the bit, so a cat is chosen, Grisabella is chosen, she goes in this hot air balloon to ascend to the Heaviside layer, and there's a rope hanging on it, and Macavity appears and grabs this rope, and falls to his, I don't know if he falls, no, he doesn't fall to his death, he falls on top of a statue and he can't get down. And you kind of like, he's magic, he can just appear and disappear. Why grab the rope? Why not just teleport into the basket, sling the other cat out, and then he's done? Because at this point, even though he kidnaps, it's 40 years old, it's a spoiler. So even though he's got rid of all of the contestants, old Deuteronomy says, look, it will never be you. You're not worthy. So at that point, he knows, there's nothing he can do which is essentially going to get him to ascend. But he manages to get onto the bottom of this rope and this basket when the winning cat is ascending, and you're like, why don't you just teleport into it and throw her out, or keep her there, or it's a weird kind of hole in his powers, which maybe doesn't show up so much in the musical because he can't just kind of phase in and out because it's in front of a live audience. It's hard to do. And like I say, because it's been around 40 years, they probably don't have the technology they have now. Because I know a lot of theatre stuff now is incredibly clever. There was an Invisible Man show a few years back, and it generally bamboozled the audience about how they managed to do these real-time effects essentially in front of the audience. But so having him be more sneaky and more devious the way he goes about it. Number one, therefore he's not as magical as Mr. Mistopheles. So that kind of, he becomes special. Whereas the way they kind of play him up in the movie, it's like, he's amazing, and it's like, this guy does it too, the bad guy does it too, so is he really that unique? And also, if Macavity doesn't have the ability to teleport and phase in and out of places, him grabbing this rope at the end makes sense because it's the only way he can get up there. Whereas in the movie, it's like he can just, warp here and there and portal here and there. So why don't you just do it into the basket as it's ascending? Because at that point, there's nothing anybody on the ground can do to stop him. So yeah, there's a few little narrative things that for me personally, which I think they might not have fixed the movie, but having a stronger thread throughout it, tying it, because it's essentially just a series of vignettes. It's a series of, we meet a cat, we hear a song about that cat, and then we go somewhere else. We meet that cat, hear a song about that cat, we go somewhere else. And nothing ties together. Because the musical didn't tie together. But the idea of a musical is that essentially it's almost like I don't want to demean it, but it's like a concert with actors. You see a song, you go for the music and the experience and the visuals and this kind of thing. But a movie, you go for story as well. That's part of it. You don't go to a concert for story. Now, you do go to the theatre for story, but it's not, I would argue, it's not as pressing as it would be in a movie, because there's so many other senses being stimulated in a live audience and a live orchestra and colourful costumes and wonderful songs and wonderful choreography. But in a movie in your living room and there's no audience and all the reactions are your own, and I just think, yes, there is issues with it, but I'm going to defend the film. I think if you didn't enjoy the film, fine. You don't have to enjoy the film. But I think that the way people have come down on it and just laid into everybody involved with this film, I don't think is fair, because, like I say, a lot of the elements are very, very good, and you can see people on screen working very, very hard, and people behind the scene. You know, the VFX, the set, the sound, everything works really well. It just, the complete package isn't there. But I think it's wrong to pan this movie the way it has been. And the fact that the audience score is 53% is like, you know, at least half and just over actually had a good time with it. I had a reasonable time with it. You know, like I say, I will watch it again. I may not go back to it time and time again, but it was, you know, an entertaining couple of hours. And again, there's another thing as well. I will just bring this up and then I'll draw this to a close, because I know I'm going on a bit. There's a weird disparity between the kind of the rules of the world. Because some cats are just cats. They are just head to toe fur. But others have shoes, and some have shirts, and some have hats. Excuse me. So some wear clothes. Jenny Edidots, played by Rebel Wilson, actually manages to take her cat skin off, and she's got a dress underneath. And you kind of like, it's all very, you're like, why is this one allowed clothes and this one hasn't? Is it just part of the character? Are they a bit higher up, so maybe they're a bit more gentrified, so they have attire, and then the other street cats maybe don't? It's never really explained, and it's never mentioned in the movie as to kind of why some are this way and some are that way. And I guess again, maybe it's just from the musical. I don't know. But again, it's just an odd little quirk. It's just another thing in the back of your mind. Is like, that doesn't make sense. And again, not every movie has to make sense. You can just kind of go along for the ride. And if you watch this, I'd encourage you to go along for the ride. And you can see the work people put in. And whether you like it or you don't, that's entirely up to you. That's like any movie. It's like any piece of art. It's like any piece of music. You either like it or you don't, and nobody can tell you wrong for liking it or don't. But saying I don't like it because this is terrible, the VFX are terrible. No, they're not. They're very good. What they created, you might not like. But the VFX team probably worked incredibly hard. And yes, they released a patch after it was already in cinemas. Which again is because they were working on it to the last minute. And again, I think they changed VFX houses. So they were pushed right to the end, and it got released because it had to hit its release date. It was a Christmas release. But maybe some effects were that something had been missed, it wasn't quite tight enough, so they kind of went back in. And the fact that they did that, you know, kind of readdressed it, just shows how much they kind of cared about the movie. They wanted it to be right. They wanted the audience to enjoy it. Yeah, and it's just had this massive backlash, and I just don't think it's worthy of it. So there you go. There's my little defense of Cats. It does have problems, yeah. Most movies do. Is it the disaster? Is it terrible? I don't think it is. You may do. That's entirely up to you. But for me, no, it's okay, and I will watch it again. So, those are my thoughts, guys. Anyway, that's all I have to say. Let me know yours in the comments, and I will see you another time.